Katie had been my best friend since kindergarten. What she announced at my baby shower made me realize I never really knew her at all, and neither did anyone else. I was 31 weeks pregnant and glowing, or at least that's what everyone kept telling me. The baby shower was everything I had dreamed of: soft pink and yellow decorations, tiny onesies hanging from clotheslines, and tables filled with gifts wrapped in pastel paper. My living room was packed with about 25 people, all the women who mattered most in my life. My mom was there, my sister, my coworkers, neighbors, and of course Katie. Katie had been helping me plan this day for weeks. She suggested the games, helped pick out the invitations, and even insisted on making the cake herself. Looking back now, I should have noticed how obsessed she seemed with every detail, how she kept asking questions about my pregnancy timeline, my doctor visits, even things that seemed too personal for a friend to ask. The shower was going perfectly. We had just finished playing that silly game where everyone guesses the baby food flavors, and I was opening presents. Katie had been unusually quiet during the gift opening, sitting in the corner with this strange expression on her face. She kept fidgeting with her hands and glancing around the room like she was planning something. Then it happened. Right in the middle of me unwrapping a beautiful handmade quilt from my aunt, Katie suddenly stood up. The room went quiet because she had this look on her face that I had never seen before, wild and desperate and almost manic. She cleared her throat and announced that she had something important to tell everyone. My heart started racing because something about her tone made my skin crawl. She said she was actually my baby's biological mother. She claimed she had been the surrogate and that my husband had been lying to me about the whole arrangement. The silence in that room was deafening. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My sister just stared with her jaw hanging open. Some of my coworkers started whispering to each other. The neighbor lady who barely knew Katie looked completely confused. Katie kept talking, getting more animated with each word. She demanded her child back, saying she had changed her mind about the arrangement and wanted to raise the baby herself. She was gesturing wildly with her hands, talking about legal rights and contracts that supposedly existed. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. This couldn't be real. I knew exactly how I got pregnant. It happened on that weekend trip my husband and I took to the mountains. I remember the ovulation tests, the pregnancy test, every single doctor's appointment. But Katie sounded so convinced, so detailed in her story that for a terrifying moment I started questioning my own memory. My hands were shaking as I tried to process what she was saying. Some of the women started asking questions, demanding to know if this was true. My mom looked like she was about to faint. The whole room erupted into chaos with everyone talking at once, some people defending me, others looking shocked and confused. Then something shifted in Katie's face. She looked around at all the horrified expressions at me sitting there pregnant and devastated, and suddenly she just crumpled. She started sobbing these horrible, gut-wrenching sobs and collapsed back into her chair. Through her tears, she admitted she had made it all up. The surrogate story, the arrangement with my husband, all of it was a complete lie. She said she was desperate for attention and wanted to feel important, wanted to be the center of something meaningful for once in her life. But that wasn't even the end of it. Once she started confessing, it was like a dam burst. She revealed that she had been lying about everything in her life for months. The job she claimed to have at the marketing firm downtown didn't exist. She had been unemployed for almost a year. The boyfriend she was always talking about, showing us pictures of, bringing up in conversations, he was completely fictional. She had stolen those photos from some random guy's social media. The most shocking revelation was that she had been faking her own pregnancy for the past 4 months. She had been stuffing pillows under her clothes, lying about morning sickness, even asking for advice about pregnancy symptoms she wasn't actually experiencing. She had created this entire alternate reality where she was living this perfect life, and somehow my baby shower became the stage where her fantasy world collided with reality in the most devastating way possible. Update 1. The aftermath of the baby shower was unlike anything I could have imagined. After Katie left that day, crying and apologizing over and over, I sat in my living room surrounded by scattered gift wrapping and half-eaten cake, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My mom and sister stayed to help clean up, but nobody really knew what to say. We kept moving around each other in stunned silence, picking up plates and folding chairs like we were in a trance. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about all the signs I had missed. Katie's behavior over the past months suddenly made horrifying sense. The way she had been so invested in my pregnancy, asking detailed questions about my symptoms and doctor visits. How she always seemed to know exactly what to say about pregnancy discomfort even though I thought she was just being a supportive friend. The The mysterious boyfriend who was always too busy to meet us, who she had excuses for every time we suggested a double date. I started remembering specific conversations differently. Like when she talked about her morning sickness, I had felt so connected to her, thinking we were going through this journey together. Or when she complained about her work stress, and I felt bad that she was dealing with job pressure while pregnant. Every shared moment I thought we'd had was built on lies. The worst part was realizing how isolated she must have felt to create such an elaborate fantasy. Katie had always been a little dramatic, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. She had constructed an entire fake life, complete with fake ultrasound photos she showed people and fake doctor appointments she pretended to attend. My husband was furious when I told him what happened. He wanted to cut contact with Katie completely, saying she was clearly unstable and potentially dangerous. He was worried about what she might do next, whether her obsession with our pregnancy might escalate into something scarier. Part of me understood his concern, but another part of me felt heartbroken for the friend I thought I knew. 3 weeks after the baby shower incident, Katie showed up at my door unannounced. She looked terrible, thin, exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes. She begged me to let her explain, saying she had been staying with her cousin across town and couldn't stop thinking about what she had done. We sat on my front porch because I didn't feel comfortable letting her inside. She told me that the lies had started small. She had lost her job about a year ago and was too embarrassed to tell anyone. She created the fake boyfriend because she felt pathetic being single while all her friends were in relationships. When she found out I was pregnant, she became obsessed with the idea of being pregnant too, so she started the fake pregnancy. She said each lie required more lies to support it, and eventually she was living in this completely fabricated reality. She had even started believing some of her own stories. The baby shower announcement was supposed to be her grand finale, her way of becoming the most important person in the room, but when she saw how much pain she was causing me, reality crashed down on her. Katie begged for forgiveness, promising she would get help and never lie again. She wanted to fix our friendship and be there for me when the baby came. Looking at her sitting there, so broken and desperate, I felt a confusing mix of anger, pity, and grief for the friendship we used to have. But I also felt something else, a deep unease about letting someone who had constructed such elaborate deceptions back into my life, especially with a baby on the way. I told her I needed time to think, that I couldn't make any decisions about our friendship while I was still processing what had happened. Update 2. 2 months passed before I heard from Katie again, and by then my life had completely changed in ways I never could have predicted. I had given birth to my daughter 3 weeks early, and she was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Those first weeks of motherhood were a blur of sleepless nights, endless feeding schedules, and the overwhelming love I felt for this tiny person. I had almost forgotten about Katie's dramatic confession until my sister called me with news that made my blood run cold. She had run into Katie at the grocery store, and Katie had approached her with what seemed like genuine excitement, asking about the baby and wanting to see pictures. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Katie was visibly pregnant. Not fake pregnant with pillows, but actually unmistakably pregnant. My sister said Katie looked completely different, healthy and glowing, with a real baby bump that was clearly genuine. When my sister asked about it, Katie acted like nothing strange had ever happened between us. She talked about her pregnancy like it was the most natural thing in the world, mentioning doctor appointments and due dates with the kind of specific details that suggested this pregnancy was very real. The strangest part was that Katie claimed the baby was due around the same time my daughter had been born. She had somehow become actually pregnant right around the time she was faking her pregnancy for attention. It was like the universe had played the cruelest joke imaginable. My sister didn't know what to say, so she just listened politely and then came straight to me with the news. We spent hours trying to figure out what this meant. Had Katie been partially telling the truth during her breakdown? Had she been pregnant with someone else's baby while pretending to be pregnant with her fake boyfriend's baby? Or had she somehow gotten pregnant immediately after her confession, as if she was determined to make her lies become reality? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I became. Katie had demonstrated that she was capable of creating incredibly elaborate deceptions. How could I trust that this pregnancy was real? But my sister insisted that what she saw was definitely a genuine pregnancy, not something that could be faked with props. I decided I needed to know the truth, so I did something I never thought I would do. I drove by Katie's apartment building to see if I could spot her. I felt like a stalker, sitting in my car with my 3-week-old daughter sleeping in the back seat, waiting to catch a glimpse of my former best friend. After about an hour, I saw her coming out of the building, and my sister was right. Katie was undeniably pregnant, probably around 7 or 8 months along. She was walking carefully with that distinctive pregnancy waddle, holding her lower back the way I remembered doing during my final weeks. There was no way this could be fake. But seeing her there, so obviously pregnant, brought up emotions I wasn't prepared for. Part of me felt vindicated. Maybe her mental break at my baby shower had been triggered by her own secret pregnancy and the stress of maintaining all her lies. But another part of me felt this weird sense of loss, like we should have been going through our pregnancies together, supporting each other through the challenges and excitement. I drove home that day feeling more confused than ever. My husband thought I was crazy for even caring about Katie's situation, reminding me of all the pain she had caused and warning me not to get sucked back into her drama. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story, that Katie's breakdown and this mysterious pregnancy were connected in ways I didn't understand. 2 weeks later, I got my answer in the most unexpected way possible. Katie's cousin, who I had met a few times over the years, reached out to me through social media. She said she had been wrestling with whether to contact me, but felt like I deserved to know the truth about what had really been happening with Katie. Update 3. The truth that Katie's cousin revealed was more complicated and heartbreaking than anything I could have imagined. Katie had indeed been pregnant during the time she was faking her pregnancy, but she had suffered a miscarriage at about 12 weeks. The fake pregnancy with pillows and made-up symptoms had been her way of denying the loss and continuing to live in a world where she was still expecting a baby. The cousin explained that Katie had been too devastated and ashamed to tell anyone about the miscarriage. She had already announced her pregnancy to friends and family, had started showing people ultrasound photos, and couldn't face the sympathy and questions that would come with admitting the loss. So she just kept pretending, using the fake boyfriend story to explain why he wasn't around for support. But the deception became more and more difficult to maintain. Katie was dealing with grief and depression while trying to keep up the charade of being happily pregnant. She quit her job because she couldn't focus on work while managing her emotional turmoil and the stress of maintaining her lies. The fake boyfriend became more elaborate because people kept asking to meet him. My pregnancy announcement had been a trigger for Katie because it reminded her of what she had lost. She became obsessed with my experience, living vicariously through my pregnancy while secretly mourning her own. The baby shower announcement was her breaking point. She couldn't handle being in a room celebrating new life when she was still grieving her loss. The cousin also revealed that Katie had gotten pregnant again almost immediately after her confession at my baby shower. She had met someone at a support group for people dealing with pregnancy loss, and they had connected over their shared grief. The relationship moved very quickly, partially because they were both desperate to replace what they had lost. This new pregnancy was Katie's chance to start over, to have the experience she had been faking and grieving for simultaneously. But she was terrified to tell anyone about it, afraid that people would think she was lying again or that something would go wrong like it had before. Learning this information completely changed how I felt about everything that had happened. Katie hadn't been maliciously trying to ruin my baby shower or steal attention from my pregnancy. She had been a grieving mother, drowning in her own loss and unable to find a way to tell the truth. Her lies had been a coping mechanism, not a calculated attempt to deceive people. I found myself crying for the friend I had lost, not just through her deception, but through the tragedy she had experienced alone. I thought about all the times she had asked about my pregnancy symptoms and realized she was probably comparing them to what she remembered from her own brief pregnancy. When she talked about morning sickness and fatigue, she wasn't making it up, she was remembering. The cousin said Katie was doing better now, getting proper support for her grief and anxiety about the new pregnancy. She had been honest with her new partner about everything that had happened, and he was helping her work through her fears about losing another baby. They had even attended counseling together to prepare for the challenges of pregnancy after loss. But Katie was still too ashamed to reach out to any of her old friends, convinced that everyone saw her as crazy and dishonest. She missed me terribly and regretted how everything had happened, but didn't know how to fix the damage she had caused. After talking to the cousin, I spent several days thinking about what I wanted to do with this information. My husband was still skeptical, worried that this might be another elaborate story designed to manipulate me into forgiving Katie. He pointed out that even if the miscarriage story was true, Katie had still chosen deception over honesty and had put me through emotional trauma at what should have been one of the happiest times of my life. But I kept thinking about the friend I had known for 25 years before any of this happened. Katie had been there for me through breakups, family problems, career changes, and countless other challenges. She had been the first person I called when I got engaged, when I bought my house, when I found out I was pregnant. One devastating period of poor judgment didn't erase all the years of genuine friendship we had shared. Final update. I made the decision to reach out to Katie, but I did it carefully and on my own terms. I sent her a simple text message saying that I had learned about her miscarriage and wanted her to know that I was sorry for her loss. I didn't mention anything about forgiveness or rebuilding our friendship. I just acknowledged her grief as one human being to another. Katie called me within an hour of receiving that text, crying so hard she could barely speak. She apologized over and over for the pain she had caused, for the lies, for ruining my baby shower, for everything. But mostly, she thanked me for acknowledging her loss, for being the first person to recognize that she had been a mother, even if only briefly. We talked for almost 2 hours that day. Katie told me about the miscarriage, about the depression that followed, about how terrified she was of losing this new baby. She explained how the lies had started as a way to avoid dealing with her grief, but had snowballed into something she couldn't control. She had wanted to tell me the truth so many times, but was too ashamed and afraid of losing me completely. I told her about my daughter, about the challenges of new motherhood, about how much I had missed having my best friend to share these experiences with. We both cried a lot during that conversation, grieving not just for her lost baby, but for the friendship we had damaged and the time we had lost. Katie gave birth to a healthy son 2 months later. I was one of the first people she called from the hospital, her voice shaky with relief and joy. She had been convinced throughout her pregnancy that something would go wrong, that she didn't deserve a healthy baby after everything she had done. When her son arrived safely, she felt like she had been given a second chance at everything. I visited her in the hospital with my daughter, who was now 4 months old. It was strange and wonderful to see Katie holding her baby, looking genuinely happy for the first time in over a year. Our children were born just a few months apart, just like we had both dreamed during those early weeks when I thought we were going through pregnancy together. The friendship we rebuilt was different from what we had before. There was more honesty, more vulnerability, and definitely more awareness of how easily trust can be broken. Katie was getting ongoing support for her anxiety and depression, and she had learned better ways to cope with difficult emotions than creating elaborate lies. We both acknowledged that our friendship would never be exactly the same as it was before. Too much had happened, too much pain had been caused. But we discovered that it could be something new and perhaps even stronger, built on a foundation of radical honesty and mutual forgiveness. Our children are now 2 years old and they play together regularly. Katie often jokes that they'll grow up being best friends just like we were, but hopefully with better communication skills. She has become an advocate for pregnancy loss awareness, speaking openly about her miscarriage and encouraging other women to seek support instead of suffering in silence. Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that Katie's breakdown at my baby shower was actually the beginning of both of our healing processes. Her dramatic confession forced us both to confront truths we had been avoiding. She had to face her grief and mental health struggles, and I had to examine what friendship and forgiveness really meant to me. The experience taught me that people can do terrible things while they're drowning in pain, and that sometimes the most generous thing you can do is throw them a lifeline instead of watching them sink. It also taught me that rebuilding trust is possible, but it requires patience, boundaries, and a willingness to accept that relationships can be transformed by trauma rather than destroyed by it. Katie will always carry the weight of the choices she made during the darkest period of her life. But she's also learned that shame and secrecy only make pain worse, while honesty and vulnerability, even when they're terrifying, can lead to healing and connection. Our friendship survived because we both chose to do the hard work of rebuilding rather than walking away from 25 years of shared history. These days, when I watch our children playing together, I sometimes think about the baby Katie lost and wonder what might have been different if she had felt safe enough to share her grief from the beginning. But mostly, I feel grateful for the friendship we've created from the ashes of the old one, and for the lesson that love can be stronger than lies, even when the lies have caused tremendous pain.